All right, so let's go to the NFC now. Let's pivot. Let's make a little move over to the NFC. Let's start off with the New York Giants, Sully. What do the Giants need? Daniel Jones, what are they going to do with him? Saquon, what's their biggest need, though? Because they do have a big void at the wide receiver slot as well.
Well, that's what it is, right? I mean, if we're not talking about re-signing Daniel Jones and re-signing Saquon Barkley, if we're talking about just adding to the roster that we saw last year, it's the wide receiver spot, and it's not even close. And now, again, wherever you want to get that, if you want to go into the DeAndre Hopkins waters, if you want to be one of these teams where T. Higgins becomes available and you want to do something along those lines, then sure, that's totally fine. Or if you want to draft somebody, that's fine as well. I think you might have to take multiple stabs at a wide receiver too. I don't think that they're one wide receiver away from being a capable offense. I mean, we're talking about, these guys that were on practice squads making significant impacts on this team a year ago. So they need a couple of different stabs. I'm not saying that you have to do first round, second round, third round, all on wide receiver, but you do kind of have to replenish that room. I mean, you did lose Kadarius Toney, who was a first-round pick for you, to Kansas City this past year. You traded him. You're re-signing Isaiah Hodgins, and you're saying that he was a huge piece for them, but he was on the he's a backup in Buffalo. It's not like you're talking about anybody has any sort of cachet. So for me, it's wide receiver, no matter how you get it, whether it's drafting, trading, free agency. That to me is the number one priority, obviously, with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley coming back as well.
Yep, I totally agree. All right, let's move on to my guys, NFC champions, Philadelphia Eagles. What are the biggest moves that you feel like the Eagles need to make this offseason?
Well, I'll sit back. You tell me, man. Come on.
I mean, for me personally, I think our main things that we need to figure out and need to harness are, we need to get a running back. Miles Sanders, we're probably going to let him go. Just didn't, production in the regular season, yes, played well. And then to the playoffs, there was a lot of Gainwell and a lot of Boston Scott because they were the more consistent guys. They were the guys that were able to really get the offense and the run game jump-started. So I just don't believe that Howby's going to be willing to pay a guy like Miles Sanders. But on the defensive end, Javon Hargrave and CJ Gardner-Johnson are the two biggest guys that we need to re-sign. Epps needs to get signed as well. Marcus Epps needs to get signed as well. But those two guys are the biggest guys that on the defensive end need to get signed. Hargrave played very well, had double-digit sacks, really plays well in the run game as well. And then obviously CJ Gardner-Johnson led the league in interceptions, or was at least top 2 in interceptions this year. And he's a very versatile piece. He's a guy like Brian Dawkins who can play a lot of different positions and move a lot of different places on the field and give you a lot of production, and allows the defensive coordinator to call a lot of calls out there on the field. So those are the biggest things that I feel like my Eagles team needs to address this offseason.
Do you consider Bradbury good as gone? Just because
I mean, from what his press conference said, he said that, he doesn't want to play for cheap. And I mean, that's fine. You can go to maybe a losing team or and not have
already bitter about it. I love it.
Because it's just like you almost won a Super Bowl. You had a team in the Giants. They released you. We picked you up. And obviously it wasn't on a deal that you wanted. But, there's things that I feel like teams can do to maybe make sure you get your money on the back end. But if you want to win, it's what's important to guys. I don't knock guys for, money being important to them. I have no issue with that. But, if you don't want to win, that's fine. That's all good.
Yeah, so I would think corner is definitely a clear need for them. I like the running back situation too. I mean, if all of a sudden Robinson out of Texas is sitting there at number 30 at the end of the first round, that would be
a
fun pick. That's a fun that from a fantasy football perspective. That's a fun pick. That is good
him and Jalen Hurts together would be nuts.
Yeah, that's so. I think I'm with you. Cornerback. And again, if you want to get a little spicy at running back at the end of the first round, if Robinson's sitting there or something like that, then sure. I like that a lot.
All right, let's pivot. Let's move on. Let's go to the Commanders. What do the Commanders need, Sully? Obviously, they tried Wentz. Wentz didn't work out. They have a void at quarterback. Their defense wasn't too shabby this year, but offensively, what do they need?
Yeah, it's still quarterback, right? I mean, I know that there's so many reports, and I know our own Jonathan Jones is reporting that Sam Howell is entering the offseason program as quarterback one. They're talking, and throughout the entire process of their offensive coordinator search, they were telling, according to JJ, that they had in mind that Howell's going to be their guy, at least to start the offseason program and all of that stuff. And with Eric Bieniemy, it seems like that's kind of the same mantra going into this now that he's hired. I don't know if I believe him though. Like, I just don't know if I believe that, because if all of a sudden, like, a guy is available to you that you know is clearly better, like, why wouldn't you go after that? Like, if all of a sudden there's just no market for like Jimmy Garoppolo, like, do you really feel like Sam Howell is that high? Like, is his ceiling going to be that high? Like, I don't know. It's just, he was like the 5th quarterback taken last year, and again, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to be good. I mean, we've had quarterbacks fall into the NFL draft and have great NFL careers, obviously, but I just feel like, they're doing themselves a bit of disservice. I think they've mismanaged the quarterback situation for the last few years here. Even last offseason when they were going after Carson Wentz, they were like the first team to make a move for a quarterback. They didn't even let the dominoes fall. They were just like, we want Carson Wentz, when nobody else wanted Carson Wentz. And then a few months later, you have like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers possibly moves. Like, you have all these quarterbacks all of a sudden moving, or at least possibly moving, Matt Ryan even, and they were already sitting there with Carson Wentz. It just made no sense to me. So this offseason, it might be smart to sit back and say, hey, listen, we're going to be happy with what we have, but don't not look around. Like, you can still go shopping. Like, let's not just go home with the groceries here. Let's keep our eyes in the aisle.
You're not in a committed relationship. You're still
Absolutely
able to
not.
play the field. You're still able to see what else is out there.
So to me, it's still quarterback. As much as they'll say, like, it's, and I believe that that's what they're saying. I just don't know if, when push comes to shove, and if a quarterback's staring them in the face, I still think that they would go after that guy, whoever that may be.
And they also have a lot of ownership things to hash out and deal with
because they have a good roster, like you said. Like, the defense plays well. They have Terry McLaurin, who's one of the best receivers in the NFL. Jahan Dotson as well. I mean, Brian Robinson is a good running back for them as well. Obviously, after just a crazy start to his career, obviously getting shot and missing the first few weeks there, but they have pieces around them that if you insert a decent quarterback, I think that you're not that far off from making some noise in the NFC East.
Yeah, I do not disagree. They've got a lot over there. So let's pivot. Let's move on to another team that everybody loves to talk about, the Dallas Cowboys. What's happening with Dak? Is it an actual possibility that he gets moves? Obviously, Kellen Moore is out of there. But what do you also do with a guy like Tony Pollard and Zeke? So, like, what do the Cowboys need?
Well, this is what's going to be interesting. It's the skill positions. I kind of lumping it all together for Dallas, because I do think that they could use a secondary wide receiver opposite of CD Lamb, almost like a guy like Amari Cooper, who they probably shouldn't have got rid of in the first place and just restructured his deal. But that's neither here nor there. That cow's already left the barn. So I do think that the backfield's probably going to be the most interesting. Zeke is not at the point in his career now where he can carry a backfield, and Tony Pollard was clearly the better back now. And you can make a case that he might find a better contract somewhere else, and he leaves Dallas. I mean, yes, they could, put the franchise tag on him, and we'll see what happens there. But like, I don't know if that's a guarantee that he's returning. Yeah, he's a key piece to their offense, but if all of a sudden a team comes around and says, hey, we'll pay X amount of dollars, and Dallas is only coming in at a shorter amount, then it's in his right to go leave somewhere. So to me, it's the skill positions. Whether you lose Tony Pollard, then yes, you have to replenish that in some way, shape, or form in free agency or via the draft. And if you're able to retain that, I would then move my attention towards a number 2 wide receiver somewhere, whether, again, it's draft, trade, free agency.
All right, let's move on to the NFC South. Let's start off with the Atlanta Falcons. They have a lot of holes, Sully. Which hole is getting plugged up first?
Well, let's just do this. Let's make life easier for us and speed this thing up. The NFC South. You have the Atlanta Falcons, you have the Carolina Panthers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the New Orleans Saints. Outside of playing in the same division, what do they have in common? They all need a quarterback. Every single one of them. Tom Brady's gone. That he's retired. And you have new regimes all across that, with Frank Reich coming into Carolina. They all need new quarterbacks. And so, again, how they go about doing it, I think is going to be interesting. I think that You have a team in the New Orleans Saints who it feels like Derek Carr is a really strong candidate there. It doesn't feel like he's a fit, or at least there's much talk about him going to any of those other teams in that division, which is kind of interesting because I do think that Tampa Bay could be a fascinating spot for him. But I think that they're a veteran quarterback. They're going to be in the veteran quarterback market. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, he fulfills his destiny of succeeding Tom Brady, just happens to be in Tampa Bay. But Atlanta, to me, is fun because they could be a Lamar Jackson team. And I love that. I absolutely think that that would be so fun to see him in Atlanta, just kind of this generation's Michael Vick wearing the Falcons uniforms, running around. Like that to me would be so fun. And they have weapons on offense that you could even make a case are better than Baltimore's right now. Like Drake London is better than any wide receiver that the Baltimore Ravens have. Kyle Pitts, talent-wise, is right there with Mark Andrews. They just didn't throw him the football last year. And I know that as a as a Kyle Pitts fantasy football owner, it was not a fun experience. But if you put a guy like Lamar Jackson in there, I think that it instantaneously makes your offense so much more dynamic. Arthur Smith is a great head coach, great offensive mind. You put him in his system, boy, you could have some fascinating concepts offensively. So in Carolina as well, maybe I think Carolina quickly is a young quarterback road that they're going to go down. I don't think Frank Reich is taking this job saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the same thing I did in Indy and just go through all these veteran quarterbacks. I think he's going to want to draft, develop, and bring along his team a bit slower. And so that's kind of how I see both of these teams. I see Atlanta swinging for the fences, maybe with Lamar Jackson, Carolina starting over with a young quarterback, and then you have New Orleans and Tampa Bay kind of in that veteran quarterback market.
I don't disagree with that at all. And I think the Lamar Jackson thing would obviously be nuts and would definitely pay homage to Michael Vick.
Again, I like chaos. Cool. So if all of a sudden
the number 8, messy. It's okay. It's fine to like messiness.
It's fine.
It's all good. All right, let's pivot to the NFC North. Let's look at the Chicago Bears. First overall pick. Where could they go? There was talks about trading Justin Fields. Is that a possibility, or do they go get an edge rusher?
Yeah, I don't think that they do. I think Justin Fields has showed you. I think you can probably attest to this as well. I think Justin Fields is very much on a similar path to Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
I think that he is in that same kind of ascension. He's not maybe as polished as a passer, but at the same time, if all of a sudden they put capable pieces around him, then you could start having the conversation. You can truly evaluate him at that point. Is I guess the best way to say that. So at the number 1 overall pick, Will Anderson is probably just the easy answer, right? You just, you help your edge and you help your defense. Now, if you want to get crazy with it, like you sell that pick to the highest bidder and you have multiple pieces on the defensive side coming in. Like if you can get multiple first-round picks, like if all of a sudden Houston wants to get crazy and it's like, here's 2 and 12 because we really love Bryce Young and we don't want Indy to get him, then sure, like you do that and you continue to maximize what you have in terms of assets, because this is a team that not only has the number 1 overall pick this year, they have the most cap space by far out of anybody else in the NFL. So they can kind of revamp this thing relatively quickly. Like as much as we're talking about, New England or these other teams maybe getting a wide receiver and trading a first-round pick for them, like Chicago could do that easily and sign them to a massive contract as well. And that's one thing that it could be interesting with Indianapolis as well. If they all of a sudden want to go young and kind of are doing a soft rebuild with a quarterback, well, Michael Pittman's in that same boat as needing a new contract and you might want to get paid and maybe that doesn't fit your timeline. So all of a sudden, if they want to move up to 1, you get their first-round pick and Michael Pittman. Well, all right, you're starting to cook a little bit with Justin Fields in that offense. So, there's a couple of ways that they go down, but to me, it's just continuing to build around Justin Fields. They have so many needs that it's tough to pinpoint one. I would say wide receiver, just so we can get a true evaluation of Justin Fields as a passer. But on defense, if you're going to stick at number 1, just help the edge and go with Will Anderson.
Oh, look who just
hey.
We got our guy Brinson here.
Is this the Pick Six podcast?
This is the Pick Six podcast. Welcome aboard.
Not without you, brother.
Yeah, my bad. I don't know why I thought we do 3:30 before. We're transitioning out of the season mode. It's fine.
Yeah,
my apologies, Sully.
Oh, you're good.
Good job by you, fellas.
So we're talking about the NFC North right now. We already discussed the Bears. Brinson, you can take over and kind of ask about the Lions. Maybe what's next for the Lions? What did the Lions need this coming off season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lions are really interesting because we were talking about this with the Super Bowl odds with RJ, right? And it's like you start looking at these Super Bowl odds for the NFC North, and the Lions have the shortest odds of any team in the NFC North to win the Super Bowl, which, Sully, is absolutely bat smell insane to suggest that the Lions are the favorites to win this division or the favorites to win the most likely team to win the Super Bowl. I mean, I do think that if you look at the rosters, all the rosters in the division, I think you could make the case that the Lions have the most balanced roster of all the teams in the NFC North.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, to me, it's all defense at this point. If you all of a sudden you can build that secondary up. I mean, we saw that they could score 30 points a game. The only problem was that they were allowing like 30 points a game. So you add a corner in there at some point, whether again it's via the draft, free agency, whatever you want to do. Like I would lean a little bit more towards building that young core out. Like I would go draft that way because it just doesn't. It doesn't feel like they're like a Super Bowl contender. Like I don't think that you should go after, like we were talking about, Billy. Like I don't think like Jalen Ramsey's a guy like they're a candidate for Jalen Ramsey. I don't think that would make much sense now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is like they are the favorite, but it's I think it's still hard to say this is a a Super Bowl contender. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm skeptical of them being the favorite. I think that the Vikings are probably. Like if you to pick between the Vikings and the Lions right now, who wins the division? Your life is on the line. I would probably lean towards the Vikings, but I think the Lions will be the trendy pick amongst most of the media. I don't know what it would be, like the whatever the media would be.
Yeah, but I would go Minnesota too, especially with Brian Flores coming in as their DC. Like I think that they are trending upward as well, and I think that they have a little bit more of a higher ceiling. Yeah. I mean, Detroit is grittier. They play tougher because of Dan Campbell and all that stuff. Like we were saying earlier, he's biting kneecaps and all that. But like, I still like the top tier talent with Minnesota. And so, yeah, no, I would lean more that way.
I also think you could make the case that like, while the Lions, have plenty of talent in terms of the receivers and the pass catchers, that, that this is a team that could go out and still add another pass catcher. Like, Amon St. Brown and Jameson Williams are studs. They traded away TJ Hawkinson. Like they still need, Jameson Williams just returned from pup at the end of the season, right? Amon St. Brown is an all pro, but like they do need, they do need like they're one injury away from like, oh wow, this is not really a team that has a ton of depth in terms of what they want to do at receiver position. So
do we even find like some sort of pass catching tight end as well? Like are they in that kind of? Obviously you lose TJ Hawkins and you kind of need somebody along those lines. So that's definitely a spot for them to look at.
Agreed. And it'll be interesting too, because this is a team that has under Dan Campbell and the current regime built out, from sort of the from the interior. And the other thing is they can say they like Jared Goff all they want. He's still not extremely old, but at some point, like they are going to have to take that plunge into the quarterback pool and try to pick one up in the draft as well.
100%. I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying here. Like it's, okay, the betting favorite and all that. And, we could say like, okay, they need a cornerback and help that secondary or help that defense or add another wide receiver. The elephant in the room is that like your quarterback who is playing well, but the ceiling for that quarterback, it feels a little, and I'm not saying this to be rude, but like it feels more Alex Smithy than it does Patrick Mahomesy, if that makes sense.
I would not disagree with you whatsoever. Okay, moving along to the Vikings. Have we covered the Vikings?
We covered the Vikings a little bit, yeah. So Packers.
They need to solve Billy's shaking his head. No, we have not covered the Vikings.
Well, I mean, like we didn't necessarily dive deep into the Vikings.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, we did mention the Vikings though. We did. So I mean, yeah, we can go to the Packers. That's fine.
No, whatever. I don't care. I mean, I'm the one who showed up at the wrong time. The Packers, like, I think they have a pretty clear, like, I mean, if we're talking about strictly roster building, there's a lot of different things that they have to worry about. If we're talking about, off-season needs, I mean, let's take it as a global approach and say they got to figure out what the hell they're going to do with the quarterback position. Where is Aaron Rodgers going to play? Is it Green Bay? Is it Las Vegas? Is it the Jets? Is it where? Like, is he? Are they going to trade him? Is he going to retire? Like, what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? That's the question, Sully.
It kind of feels like the momentum, at least in terms of the more recent reporting, is kind of shifting that they do want to move away from Aaron Rodgers. It kind of feels like where the momentum is going. Again, who knows when he comes out of his wherever his hyperbolic chamber is or whatever the hell it is.
I thought he was out now. I actually thought I saw him over the weekend, but I don't think that was true.
You were in the dark room? Good for you. Wow.
Yeah, I think he's out now, right?
He might be. I have no idea. Or he went back in. Who knows?
Well, you think he double dipped on the darkness?
You never know. Maybe it was fun. I would hate it. I'd be claustrophobic, but that's me.
I think I could deal with it if you could like listen to music, but it's like,
sure.
There's no music allowed. There's no nothing. You just have to sit there in the darkness.
Yeah, no, I can't be alone. I can't be alone with my thoughts.
And occasionally somebody drops you food off, which also is like, I'm sure that it's really good food, Like I doubt
I don't think
it does like Cliff Bars.
Yeah, I don't think you're getting cafeteria food during the whatever it's called. But no, I think that, first and foremost, figure out what you're going to do with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, at some point, I think this is the offseason, though, right? Like, if you're going to stay with Aaron Rodgers, then this is the offseason you trade Jordan Love. Like, you got to pick a side at a certain point.
Well, now remember, they have March 15th, I guess, or March-ish. Like, the next month, they have to pick up his 5th-year option. Yeah. Which is crazy that he's like, he hasn't had a meaningful start,
right?
Outside of, injury or whatever. I mean,
the whole idea was when you have these first-round rookies, you take advantage of them being on a rookie contract. They're going to go, if they go this route, they're going to go from paying quarterback $50 million a season to now 5th-year option.
And that 5th-year option would probably be like $19 million, something like that. I mean,
it's not cheap.
Yeah.
And so it's gonna hurt you from addressing other needs on this roster, like wide receiver. Like this team does, Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, great starts, but do you add other pieces here? We're just kind of
add other pieces. That is not enough.
Like exactly what we're saying with Detroit. Like, and that's those are higher end guys in terms of talent, but all of a sudden you start getting hurt. Like, you're not that deep at that spot. Like, you need to start replenishing the pool.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, like that's something that they're going to have to focus on is, who's our quarterback, and once we figure out who the quarterback is, who is the quarterback throwing to, and maybe you can pull that off by trading Rodgers and you get a receiver back or something like that. Okay, NFC West.
NFC West.
NFC West. Where do you want to start on the NFC West?
Let's go with Seattle. That could be fun.
Seattle, it could all be fun. Seattle's fine. They have to figure out the quarterback position. Geno Smith's a free agent. One would think that he wants to come back, but one would also think that he would like to get paid. And Drew Lock, I don't think they have a quarterback signed on the roster, actually. I think they don't have a quarterback under contract on the roster, excuse me.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
No, Geno Smith's obviously the number one guy. It feels like out of all these quarterback situations, even like throw in Daniel Jones, throw in all these, this just feels like the one that's super clear cut, like he's going to resign.
It would be insane if he went somewhere else.
But isn't it always the one that you're least expecting? You got to keep your head on the swivel in the NFL. Who knows what happens? So, as much as it seems like it's a slam dunk that Geno Smith will resign with Seattle and all of that, never say it's 100% until we see the tweet where he's signing the contract and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, it's also like there's going to be teams out there that need a quarterback. Excuse me. And, other teams have money, and the Seahawks may not want to say, all right, Geno, here's $30 million for 3 years. Like that's per year. Like that is a lot of money for Geno Smith, where, before you trade for, you signed Geno as your backup, you trade Russell Wilson, and now Geno is your starter, and he's on his cheap backup contract. And, you sort of use the Moneyball approach that like teams like to do with the rookie contract, right?
Yeah.
Where you're paying a quarterback a very low sum and you're getting the most out of him. When you're paying Geno Smith $30 million a year, it changes the calculus on what you're expecting from your quarterback.
Yeah. And so to me, he does match up their timeline though a lot. Like, I was talking about this with the Raiders. Like if they go young at quarterback, it just doesn't feel like that matches their timeline with the rest of that roster with all those guys that they got last year. If you get Geno Smith, it does feel like that makes a little bit more sense when you have guys like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Like it feels like you're starting to try to contend obviously you are trying to contend in the NFC West, and you have teams that are either rebuilding or trying to revamp. Like you might be the most stable team in that division outside of the San Francisco 49ers.
LJ Collier and Bruce Irvin, both free agents. So it's a spot where they probably need to look at, they're going to need to get some more defensive line help as well. That's the other thing they're going to look at. But yeah, the quarterback is obviously the number one position for the Seahawks. How about the San Francisco 49ers?
Well, I don't want to
be a dead horse here, but again.
Well, it's not. It is quarterback, but it's not quarterback. Like
it's like the Packers. Like it's not so much.
Yeah.
Do you have to go find a quarterback? You have to figure out like, is Trey Lance a good quarterback?
Yes, and whether or not Trey Lance is good, whether Brock Purdy's ready to start the season, like do you have to add somebody else? I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo's good is gone, but do you bring in somebody else to kind of at least be the absolute, break glass in case of emergency type of a guy? But I think one thing that is kind of sneaky under the radar here is wide receiver. Like it's, Brandon Ayuk is going to be one of these guys that is due for an extension. And if all of a sudden things don't go well, then you're going to have to make a hard decision. I mean, this team pays Deebo Samuel, pays George Kittle, has to pay Nick Bosa at some point, which is going to be a monster deal.
Yes.
You can only have so much money to go around. And yeah, you might have rookie quarterbacks in the fold right now, but that's still a lot of money to invest. And if you feel like you can kind of get that elsewhere, I think that wide receiver could increasingly become a position of need for them.
It feels like Brandon Ayuk is the guy that everyone on like the Giants want. There's like hot to trade for, like every all Giants fans like, we're just gonna get Ayuk. It's like they're not just gonna give him up. Like
he's good. Go pick him up.
Yeah, like we're just gonna get Ayuk from the 49ers. Like, okay, like sure, that's not really how that works. He is also due for a fifth-year option coming up as well, so they have to make that decision. The 49ers too. Obviously, they're gonna pick it up, I would think, this offseason. But yeah, I mean, they need the back end too. Actually, they need to worry. They got a bunch of free agents on the back end, so they're gonna have to worry about that. But the quarterback position here for the 49ers, absolutely key. I highly doubt Brock Purdy's ready to start the season.
I doubt it.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, is Trey Lance the guy? If you don't trust Trey Lance, you got to figure out something else. Like, do we have somebody we can start the season with that we trust? Because you're not going to get Tom Brady now. Probably not going to get Aaron Rodgers.
So is this the ceremonial Jacoby Brissett team for 2023?
I feel like the Panthers are, but
okay.
But the Niners could be too. He's not a ceremonial.
He's a ceremonial, like start 6 games to start the year to wait for the guy. I mean, I love him. He's great.
Yeah, but you're probably not wrong. All right, moving along to the Los Angeles Rams, who have actually, like, it was weird. I think we all know that now. The core is coming back, right? You never know. It's like year to year with these guys, whether it's Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, Aaron Donald, whether they're going to all come back. They need some help on the front, on the defensive backfield, and really up front on defense. Like, they have everything they need on offense, I think, between Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson, and then of course Stafford. And if you trust Cam Akers now, the question is, can this offensive line improve, and can they get, can they be good enough on defense with this core of stars that they like to roll with?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a huge question. And it's so tough to evaluate Los Angeles because it feels like we never really even saw them, right? Like, it feels like we saw them for the first, 8 weeks of the season, and then they started to really mail it in. But I think that, yeah, defensively, definitely bringing some additions, but I think the offensive line is a sneaky big one too.
No, the offensive line's the biggest issue.
Not too long ago in week 1, Matthew Stafford was sacked 7 times.
The offensive line was terrible. Like, the offensive line has to get better if they want to get back to championship form.
And so that to me is the biggest thing.
RJ had a good point on the Super Bowl odds pod last week. It's like, this team did win the Super Bowl 2 years ago. It's like, oh, the Rams stink. It's like, well, they did win the Super Bowl, 35-1 to win the Super Bowl this year. If they were able to flip the offensive line around and get better at that spot, they have Sean McVay, like, they have the coaching. Stafford was hurt all last year. Like, I give him a pass for last year. I'll be very curious to see what kind of sort of retooling they do this offseason. I don't think that it's a full-blown rebuild for them. Like, they really, with that core, you just can't restart.
No, I don't think so. You've spent so much. You've said F them picks, like we all know the whole mantra. The only thing that might be interesting is if you're just in such a financial bind, like we were talking about earlier in the podcast, is a guy like Jalen Ramsey expendable, and that's more of an impact to other teams throughout the league. Like, obviously you would like to keep a guy of his caliber, especially if he's playing at his powers, but at the same time, he might be an expendable piece.
Yep. Finally, Arizona Cardinals, very quickly. They need Kyler Murray to get healthy. Jonathan Gannon, new head coach, recently hired. They have some secondary free agents in the defensive side of the ball that they need to worry about. The offensive line, though, is a big problem too. 3 free agents on that offensive line. So that's, you don't know when Kyler's coming back. You know that Kyler's not going to be healthy right away. You need that offensive line to protect him.
Yeah, maybe like Mike McGlinchey, if you're looking at like a veteran free agent or something like that, like steal him from your division opponent. They were 27th offensive line in the NFL according to Football Outsiders last year. They were horrible in terms of protecting the quarterback. So that's a clear and easy one. Now, this is a team that we were talking about earlier too. Like, what's going to happen with DeAndre Hopkins? How is that going to work itself out? And who is going to be that team that ultimately lands him? So that's another shoe that needs to drop in Arizona.